come from, because the mindset is an incredible part of us bringing our message to our audience, to the people that we're called to. And then making sure when we're trying to, okay, once we've gotten that belief that yes, we can do it, this is meant for me to do, I have to touch the people that I'm called to, and we get aligned with our creativity and in that area where we're operating in our peak performance, then incredible things can happen. But if we're not careful, once we get ourselves in that performance, if we're not careful that we don't have a strategy, we can sometimes falter. So we don't want to stop at making sure that we're aligned and get into creativity. We want to make sure that we continue forward. And we're going to give you the last part of why the principle that's going to help you as well with unblocking your writing. And so over here in the training center, I have several folks that says they're ready for principle number 3. And Facebook, are you guys ready to receive principle number 3? If you can just type ready in the comment, I'll move forward. So you guys, this has been incredible for me, some incredible wisdom and nuggets and information that Dr. Kimberly has shared. And so let's talk about strategy, right? I call myself a strategist because that's one of the giftings that I have. I love when I work with my one-on-one coaching clients to link them up with an assessment that's called the Kolbe A assessment. And what's so particularly different about this Kolbe assessment compares to your Myers-Briggs and all of the other personality assessments is that Kolbe assessment looks at your instincts, and it looks at how specifically you were wired. When you came to this earth, how were you wired? What are the things that when you're put in a situation, no matter what the situation is, what's going to be your trajectory? How are you going to get from A to Z? How are you going to solve a problem, right? And so one of the things, as I did this assessment back maybe in 2012, 2013, one of the things that it said about me was that I was a strategist. I have the ability to see solutions. Isn't that incredible when you can see solutions? And so when we talk about strategy, we always have to be able to see where we're going, to understand, number one, if we're being effective, and number two, to understand if we're going to get there on time, right? So the intention around this entire masterclass was to make it practical for you guys. We want you guys to release your books. We want you to become published authors in 2018. There's no excuses. We're taking the excuses off, right? We're providing you guys this amazing content. We're going to also be sharing something else that's going to be amazing for you guys. We're just bringing you guys what we felt like, someone could have shared with us, right? So we use trial and error to get to where we are, right? So, but we don't want you to experience the same thing. So let's talk about not having a strategy, right? And really how important or why it's important to have a strategy. You have to know where you're going in order to get there, right? So we have to develop what we call a master writing strategy, right? And we say master because, hey, this is our template. This is our roadmap. This is our success map. This is what we are using. If we ever get to the point where we may be confused, we don't know what to do next, we don't know if we should, continue to write or stop, we can pull up our master writing strategy, and it's going to be our compass. It's going to be our GPS. It's going to help us get back on track. And so let me ask that question. How many of you have a writing strategy? Go ahead and put that in the comments for me. Go ahead and put that in the chat. Do you have a writing strategy? If you have a writing strategy, put a 1 there. And if you don't have a writing strategy, put a 2. Let's see how many of us actually have a writing strategy. We say we want to write a book, but do we have a strategy? Yes. Okay. So we have several individuals that are saying, I don't have a strategy. Guess what? It's okay. It's okay. That's why we're here tonight. We're here tonight to give you the elements, the components to making sure that you have in place that strategy, right? Which is just your mode of operation, how you're going to get things done when it comes to your book. So let's really get into this, because this is what's exciting for me, because I can tell you guys, when I wrote my book, my first book called Own Your Life, I didn't initially have a strategy. So what I couldn't figure out, because for 2 solid years, I tried to produce this book. I knew I had a book. I knew I had to write a book. But every time I sat down, and if any of you guys can relate, let me know. Every single time I sat down to write, it's like I could write a page, I can write 2 pages, and then I would go totally blank. I would immediately go into writer's block. But the reason why was because I didn't have a strategy. But once I figured out how important a strategy was to the success of me birthing this book, yes, Carol says sounds just like me. Yes, Anisha says yes. Once I realized how important it was for me to have a strategy, everything changed for me. So I was able to write this book in less than 30 days. And I'm going to show you guys, and I'm going to tell you guys as we talk about strategy, just how to do that. And you may say, hey, I don't want to write a book in 30 days. It doesn't matter. Based on whatever your timetable is, I'm going to talk to you about how to write your book. We're going to make sure that we're, as Dr. Kimberly said, writing at those times where we're at our highest in creativity. And I'm going to show you how to maximize that time, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about the do a little a lot technique, okay? So strategy, like I said earlier, this is your personal success plan, right? If you want to know what success means for you, what success means for you and your manuscript, then your strategy is going to tell you, right? And think about this. Your strategy is not going to look like anybody else's strategy. I'm going to tell you about the strategy that I had, but guess what? You don't have to have that same strategy. Dr. Kimberly shared some of some portions of her strategy, but guess what? You don't have to have the same strategy as Dr. Kimberly, right? We want each of you to understand how to personalize this for yourself, for your life, for all of the activities that you have going on in your world, right? It needs to fit. It needs to be fit for purpose. It needs to be fit for your life and what you're trying to do. Now, the key to writing effectively and writing in as least amount of time as possible is making sure that you develop this strategy beforehand, before you just sit down to start to write, right? Because you can make up in your mind and say, I'm going to write a book. And you say, okay, I'm going to write a book, and you just start writing. And then don't realize, before you know it, okay, what else do I write about? I have no idea, right? So you want to make sure that you develop your strategy before you even begin the writing process. And because it's going to be unique to you, your strategy, you need to build in that flexibility, right? If you know that you have things that you have to go to that's on your calendar, maybe it's one of your children that has a class that you have to be there with them in this class every single week. You know the day, you know the time. Build that into your strategy to make sure that, okay, if that particular appointment conflicts with what you've developed in your strategy for your personal writing time, then you can make adjustments, right? Your strategy, guys, is going to keep you committed. The biggest thing outside of belief and alignment and strategy that you need when it comes to writing your book is discipline, right? That commitment, that's your discipline. That's going to push you to finish your goal, right? Whenever you're feeling distracted, whenever you're feeling tired, whenever you say, well, I don't want to stay in, this weekend and work on a book. I want to go and hang out and have brunch with the girls. That commitment and that discipline is going to keep you focused on that immediate goal of getting my first manuscript out of the door. Okay. And then this is what's incredible for me, because I'm one of those people, I love accountability, right? I love accountability. Sometimes I'm very tough on myself, and sometimes I may need to love myself a little bit more because I like to be accountable. And I feel like those that are around me should be accountable, because accountability is just giving account for your ability, right? You've been given this ability. Now let's give account for it. And a strategy is going to help you keep focused. Okay. So let's start writing and let's start working specifically on your strategy. Now, if you guys have your workbooks, there are some questions in this area that you may want to focus on answering, right? So when do you want to complete your first draft? Now, this is important, right? Because you may have someone that's on the class that's listening in on Facebook or Instagram that's saying, listen, I don't want to have my first draft done until, 6 months from now, right? I would encourage you, if you are on this call, don't use 6 months, right? We want to help you get published this year. So we want you to take all of that momentum that comes with you walking into a new year, right? And getting situated and defining your goals and defining where you are. We want you to use all of that momentum and the space that we're in, right? To get our books written, right? So think about that for a second. And this is going to be important because this is going to tell us with some other things that, I have this formula that I use when I'm trying to figure out, okay, when I did my book, I figured out initially when I wanted to have my book completed by. Then I figured out, okay, what are all of the pieces and parts that I need to put in here, and how many of those pieces and parts can I get done within that time frame, right? So when do you want to complete your first draft? So you guys, if you have that, just go ahead and put that in the comment section. I want to see what you guys are saying in terms of when you want to finish your first draft. So let me see that. Just put it in the comments. What's your plan on when you will complete your first draft? Okay, guys, I'm waiting for you before I move on. If we can go ahead and put in the chat. Okay, so Chris, we put spring 2008. Give me a date. Give me a month. What does spring 2008 mean? Okay, Anisha says in 3 months. Okay, we can work with that. Give me a month. Give me a month, Chris. Okay, so when do you want to complete your first draft? Oh, look at Chris. Chris told me March the 2nd. Okay, I can work with that. Ronnie. Okay, Ronnie, we need for you to make a decision. Oh my word, I'm not sure. Maybe May 2018. Why not March, Ronnie? Why not March? So we got that piece, right? We want to make sure we know when we want to complete our first draft. Then think about this. How many pages? How many pages do you want in this book, right? Miss Pearlett says February the 25th. Awesome. How many pages? Dr. Kimberly talked about, going and visiting the bookstore. I love the bookstore. Sometimes I spend so much money in the bookstore because I absolutely love it. I love the creativity. I like the way that I feel, that I'm motivated, that I am inspired. But if there's a certain particular type of book that you want to write, just spend some time at the bookstore. Go to the bookstore, pick up the books, flip through the books, see how they've created. Look at, the size of the book and how thick the book is. Hey, would I want my book to also look like this, right? Use what you already have. We don't have to reinvent the wheel by any means, right? The wheel has already been created. There's so many books that's published every single year. So the wheel is already created. We don't have to create something new, right? So think about that. How many pages do you want it to appear in your book? When I look in my book, and the thing about it is looks like 135 pages. Now the document that we use to create our book, once it gets typeset and sent to, once it gets sent to the publishing company, the printing company, and it gets typeset, the page count may be a little bit different. But for what you're going to create, right, in your initial manuscript, how many pages do you want that to be? Chris said 82 to 127. Let's kind of narrow that down a little bit more, Chris. Tell me exactly what's a number. You can use either the high side or the low side. And because we're going to take that number, right, once we know how many pages, and we're going to build our writing target. Carol said 100. That's a good number. 175. That's a good number. Our daily writing target. And let me tell you how we come up with that. 100 pages, 150. I love it, ladies. Yes. 100. Yes. Probably about 140. Thanks, Ronnie. Incredible. So your daily writing target, right? All you need to do, you take your number of pages, right? We said 100 pages, and you divide it by the days to complete your first draft, right? Say, for instance, we were at the beginning of January. Say we were January 1, and we said we wanted to complete our manuscript by March the 31st. Well, you would count the number of days from January 1 to March the 31st, right? So what is it like? Is it 31? Is it 31 days? Is it 31 days in January? What is it? 28 days in February, and then another 31 in March. Add all of those days together. That number, you want the number of days. So take the number of pages and divide it by your number of days. Okay. So let me show you an example so that I make sure that you guys are following me, right? So say, for instance, I say I want to write a book that has 100 pages. And the days that I have to complete it is 30. All right, Chris, this is what I'm talking about. This strategy is getting me excited about reaching my goal. I'm glad to hear that. Do you see how easy this is, guys? You have 100 pages. You have 30 days to create your first manuscript. You divide 100 by 30 days. Can you write 3.5 pages a day? Can you guys do that? See, that's what's called doing a little, a lot. When I wrote my book, my girlfriend Clarine, and actually, I acknowledged Clarine in my book, right? So this is what I said about Clarine in the acknowledgments part of Own Your Life. A special thank you goes out to Clarine Rafford, my accountability partner. Not only did you help me stay on schedule with this writing project, but also you gave the best advice. Do a little, a lot. Those words of wisdom are priceless and continue to ring in my head. So I say this all the time. You can do just about anything. It's just a matter of taking a project, guys, like your writing project, your 100-page writing project, and just breaking it down into little bitty pieces, right? You kind of remove the pressure. No, you don't have to write all 100 pages in one day, but can you do 3 pages? Can you do 2 pages? Can you do 4 pages? It makes it a whole lot more manageable. And that's what we need. It's already pressure enough to know that we're writing a book and we're going to be sharing. Some of us may be writing books that's going to cause us to be extremely vulnerable. Some of us are going to be writing books where we've been working on business techniques and strategies for years, and we're going to put it out there in the world, and we may have a bunch of critics that's just waiting to get the book so they can see if we know our stuff or not. It's already so much pressure with just writing the book, right? Or the fact that we're saying we've made that commitment that we're going to write the book. Let's not put pressure around what that strategy actually looks like, right? We can make this strategy part so easy. Take your number of pages, divide it by the days that you have to complete it, and that's your daily writing target. And be consistent. Be consistent about it. One of the things that I did, and I'm gonna share this really quickly because we gotta move on, guys. But one of the things that I did was, if you guys can see this is just index cards, right? And you see different color index cards. And so one of the things that I did when I got ready to work on my writing strategy, instead of me just using the number of pages, I knew that I would take and this is what I call my mind mapping. This is the mind mapping that I do. I took an index card and I just did my brain dump, right? Every index card, I wrote down something that I thought would be useful or that would be important to put in this book, right? But once you go through that process, you may end up with a stack of index cards that you can separate, but each index card is going to represent a section in your book. And you can also use that methodology to break up, okay, how many of these sections do I need to write a day? Okay, so let's move on. Are you guys getting anything? If you are, just put yes. Just let me know that you guys are finding this information to be useful. Now, an important part of your strategy is making sure that you schedule your writing days and times on your calendar first, right? So I use Sundays as my planning days. On Sundays, I usually use it as my planning day to plan the week, right? For career, for my family, as well as for my business, right? And working with my coaching clients. But I also use it as my money day, which is where, I look at all of the monies that's going in and out of my business, out of my personal accounts. And I, in a spirit of gratitude, I'm just being thankful for all of the transactions going in and coming out, right? But that would be the perfect time when you sit down that one day a week, right? When you're sitting down and you're planning and mapping out everything, go ahead and map out your writing days, right? Go ahead and schedule that time in there, right? So you want to think about one of the strategies that I use, the technique that I use was I typically use 1 hour increments in a day to write my book, right? So I understood when was my peak time, right? I use early mornings, but I also use my lunch breaks, guys, right? I got an hour for lunch every single day in my corporate job as an engineer. I get an hour for lunch. Guess what? Instead of me going out with some coworkers for lunch, right? Or even going downstairs to the cafeteria, I would bring my lunch with me. And I had that 1 hour where I set my timer and I just banged out. I had whatever that index card was, or whatever my book outline actually said, because we also have to have a book outline when we write, because then that lets us know what exactly we need to be writing. The strategy is going to tell us how we do that, right? But the outline is going to tell us what exactly we need to write, right? What we're writing about. So whether that 1 hour increment works for you, I use the early mornings before the children and the husband got up, right? I use that time. I use my lunch break. I would close my office door. I had my pen and paper and I would get to writing. Sometimes I would use a computer, but a lot of times I would use the pen and paper because studies show that activates certain regions in your brain where your processing goes on and it sparks creativity. That's a little nugget. That's a bonus tip, guys. So use pen and paper to write, right? To write your manuscript, right? And so I use those 1 hour increments. Now, this is the kicker. When I could not write for that 1 hour, guess what I would do? If I had 15 minutes, I would take that 15 minutes. If I had only 20 minutes, I would take that 20 minutes. You make use of the best use of time that you have. Absolutely no excuses. I can tell you when I was writing my book, my husband, who works for the railroad, actually was in an incident, almost a near-death incident. My son, who was, he was in PE, he actually fell out in PE and was hospitalized for an entire week. It's just like I had distractions coming from every which way. And guess what that did for me? That motivated me, because what it told me was, this is a story. This is a message that you have to get out. It's being attacked from every single side, right? You have to get this message out, right? So if that's 15 minutes, take it. But shoot for 1 hour. You may say, I can't sit down and write for an hour. Fine. Break your writing times up, in 30-minute increments. Whatever it takes is what I'm saying. Whatever it takes to get the message out, we need for you guys to do that. We got to see more women, published authors, sharing their stories, making incredible impact in 2018, right? You want to also making sure that you're scheduling 5 to 7 days a week to write. Again, this was what I had, right? I knew I had 30 days, so every single day I had to write. If I missed a day for whatever reason, right? Especially with all of the things that was going on in my family, I made it up on the back end, right? My husband even took the kids away one weekend and just left me at the house with no distractions, no noise, no television, no nothing. And I was able to bang out the rest of my manuscript. Now, this is one of the things that's pretty cool for me, because sometimes I feel like I can be somewhat all over the place. But although you've written a book outline, right, that you're going to follow that says, hey, this is the things that goes in my book, you don't necessarily need to follow that sequence. I like to write when I'm inspired. So say for instance, like when I wrote my book, there was a section where I talked about energy wasters, and then a section where I talked about, the 7 components of your life where you need to have a vision. If, I felt this particular day, this morning when I got up, that I wanted to write about energy wasters, guess what? That's where I started focusing my time. So what I'm telling you is you don't have to go in sequence. If you have your book outline, you do not have to go in sequence. Write when you're whatever it is that you're motivated or inspired to write, and you can bring that together later, okay? And then, like I said earlier, adjust for any time conflicts or any other prior commitments that you guys have going on. So